Is there any way y'all could help with formula?
We do have a benevolence ministry. I can take down your information and put in a request for you.
Okay. How long would that take?
We really don't have an estimated time just because we do receive a lot of requests here. Each applicant is different. It could take a couple of days. It could take a couple of weeks. We really just don't have a time frame there.
Okay, you said it would take a couple of days to weeks?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, if approved.
You just watched a TikTok from Nikolai Monroe, who called Lakewood Church, whose pastor is none other than Joel Osteen, worth an estimated $50 million. But as you heard, they did not have baby formula readily available for a mother in immediate need. It would take days, possibly weeks, to get it to her, assuming she applied and got approved. Now, Nikolai isn't actually a mother in need. Rather, she was conducting what she called a social experiment to see which churches would actually help a member of their community. Now, seeing as how all of these churches likely describe themselves as pro-life, you'd think that providing baby formula to families in need would be a no-brainer, but that's not actually the case, because she called 43 churches, and do you want to know the number who actually agreed to help her? Take a guess. 10. Just 10, less than 25%. And Twitter user Smalls2672 put together this spreadsheet of the first 40 churches that she called. And it's easy to see how just like looking at this without going through it statistically, you are not likely to receive help from a church, although you could get lucky if you call the right one. And the tab reports that the reasons for the rejections to her ranged from, we stopped doing that to just no, with most of them telling her to call a different place for help. And here's a small taste of some of the responses that she got after calling various churches across the country, including Charlie Kirk's church.
Yes, I just want to see if there's any way y'all could help with a small can of baby formula. I've been out since last night, and my daughter, she's not 8 since last night, and she's only 2 months old, and I've been calling everywhere, and they're just telling me to keep calling churches.
Okay, so we have you ever heard of Mom's Pantry?
Yes, I already tried them. They don't have any formula.
Okay, that's our only connection to our food bank ministry. So if they don't have any baby formula, then we don't have any in our office that we could provide.
So she's been going all night and all day without anything to eat. I was just trying to see if somebody could help.
Okay, hold on just a moment.
All right. So she legit sent me to a voice recording that you can't even leave a voicemail to just to get me off the fucking phone.
I don't have any. Have you checked with Crossfire Ministries?
Yeah, I have.
Do you attend one of our campuses?
I don't attend, no. I'm just local.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to... Did you try Mercy's Gate?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any way to help you with that. I'm so sorry.
Are you a pro-life church at all?
Yeah.
So, I'm curious why you would be a pro-life church and you wouldn't help feed a starving baby that hasn't ate all night.
Unfortunately, we don't have anything like that. Have you tried St. Paul's?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, if you stop by around 1 p.m., then we can have that ready for you.
We can do this. I'll just see. Tell me what it is it's called in case I have to go get it, because I'm a great-grandpa. I'm not used to picking up phone, okay?
So, as you saw, some were willing to help, most not so much. And the elderly great-grandfather that she talked to reportedly received $75,000 in donations to his church's food pantry after his TikTok with her went viral, and that brought him to tears. And it's just nice to see somebody get rewarded for being a good person. But what I find so crazy is that it was the smaller, predominantly black churches, as well as a Buddhist temple and an Islamic center, who were willing to help, whereas the wealthier mega churches like Lakewood and Charlie Kirk's church, they were not willing to help, despite being much more wealthy than those smaller churches who did agree to help her. And one thing that struck me after listening to a number of these calls is how taken aback so many of them were by her request. even the ones who agreed to help, like the great-grandfather that she talked to, they didn't have baby formula at their church. He said he would go buy it for her and give it to her because he loves babies. He's a great-grandfather, which tells me that so many churches don't have this readily available. They don't have baby formula or food or a program in place to distribute mutual aid to their communities, which is kind of crazy because like that's what churches are supposed to do, or so I thought, but they're not doing that. But the one call that stood out is when she was recommended to call a mosque or an Islamic center after she made calls to churches, this just to see, what they would say. And they agreed to help her, no questions asked. Take a listen.
I have a 2-month-old baby, and I ran out of formula last night, and I was wanting to see if there's any way you all could help with a can of baby formula.
We can, ma'am. Where do you live? Do you live in Charlotte?
Yes, I'm like 10 minutes from you all.
Okay. And what kind of formula you need?
It's the Good Start.
Good Start. Yeah, that's fine, ma'am. If you come over here, we'll help you.
So, as you can see, they agreed to help her, no questions asked. Just let me know where you are, we'll come meet you. That's crazy, isn't it? You would expect that from the so-called pro-life fundamentalist evangelicals, but they're not doing that. An Islamic center chose to do that. And yet Muslims are demonized in this country every single day when they're helping members of their community. Now, that's just like one example. Nonetheless, it's crazy that that call stood out compared to the rest of them, where they were like, well, have you tried this or that, or tried calling this person or that person? And they hemmed and hawed. I mean, this is what churches are supposed to do. Now, in the event they were willing to help her, the 10 churches that said, yes, we'll give you baby formula, or I'll go buy baby formula personally for you, she told them that she didn't actually need the help and was just calling as part of a social experiment, sometimes at the request of a member of their congregation. And it was like pulling teeth to even get an answer out of some of these people, because like they didn't want to tell her no explicitly, but they would hope that she would take the hint after they were like, have you tried contacting this office or this local elected official? And she was like, yep, tried that, until they were just like, we can't do it. But to make matters worse, some of the churches who rejected her had the audacity to lash out and attack her after realizing that they were part of her viral social experiment. One of them called her a witch, case in point.
Folk want to apologize. I don't apologize to the devil. Yeah, sometimes Christians get so weak, you forgot we're supposed to rebuke evil. So if you could pretend to have a crying baby to try to call churches and to trick people into things. Now, let me tell you something about living faith. We fed thousands of people. And I said, we in the middle of feeding people. How you gonna do your little dirty deed, and it's just the spirit of a witch. It's a witch.
In other words, we don't do shit for our community, and instead of trying to do better, and instead of trying to learn from that embarrassment, we're going to attack the woman that exposed us as the frauds that we are with the most reasonable request ever. And he ended up making his church look worse because local news picked up his comments calling her a witch. And now everyone in the community knows that he is a cold-hearted asshole. And I just want to show you her call to that church so you can see her supposed witch behavior for yourself.
Hey, I was wanting to see if y'all could help with a small can of baby formula. I have a 2-month-old and she's been out since last night, so she's gone all night and all day without anything to eat.
We don't have any formula around, darling. I'm sorry. None. No diapers, anything for babies. We don't have any.
Could that be something you all could get and I could just pick it up?
No, we can't right now. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. All right, thanks.
How dare she? Imagine being offended by that. She tested that church, and even though it was open book and open note, they failed spectacularly, and they decided to attack her and claim that she was the bad person, even though they very clearly aren't willing to help somebody in their own fucking community. But they're not alone, because she made a similar call to a different church, and they also decided to attack her for failing her very simple test.
If somebody walked in the back door right now asking for a can of baby formula, how many of you would help? Just show by a raise of hands.
I don't see everyone's hands.
There's your social experiment.
Where's the hands?
GBC is.
He said, there's your social experiment. That's who GBC is.
Leaving Germantown Baptist Church, I talked 20 minutes to the congregation, filling them in on what has transpired over the last few days. He said he probably should have addressed the issue earlier than emailing everybody last night. He talked about how benevolent they are and what the term benevolent means. He talked about how much they have donated to the PE. 800 pounds of food, I think is what he mentioned just in the last couple of weeks. One thing he said is that woman is folly. I have to look it up. It's Proverbs. Woman is folly, seductive, and knowing nothing. He did manage to get in woke. I don't know if he said liberal, but he definitely mentioned woke. It seems to me that there are a lot of empty seats in that church. It's a big church. There are a lot of empty seats. There's a lot of empty parking spaces. It kind of says something about the church, don't you think?
Please let me remind you that this place has a spa. It has childcare. It has children's choirs. It has all different types of things that they claim for children from birth until 5th grade. You just have to go there. But their Google hours are closed on Saturday and Sunday. That's odd for a church. They're not open on Sundays. They have business hours Monday through Friday. So they deserve business taxes.
And that I agree with, because one of the main arguments for tax-exempt status of churches is that they give back to their communities in theory, therefore they shouldn't have to pay taxes. That's not the underlying legal justification, by the way, but it's a common argument used in favor of churches keeping their tax-exempt status. But I mean, if churches aren't doing shit for their communities, not to mention pushing overtly political sermons, I mean, they absolutely should lose their tax-exempt status. That's only fair. Any prosperity preachers or hate-filled pastors, they shouldn't get to subsist off of the teat of the taxpayer. Because if they're going to be a net negative to their community, they shouldn't be rewarded for that by not having to pay taxes like the rest of us. And in many instances, some of these churches are downright predatory because they pressure their members to give money that they can't afford with the false promise of a blessing in return. Now, this is anecdotal, but at my family's church when I was younger, they pressured members to tithe 10% of their income, which is pretty standard. And my family was doing that all the way up until my dad lost his business after he got disabled. And I remember my parents talking about how they couldn't afford to give their 10% and they felt really bad about that, but they were pressured to do so anyway because, you know, of the blessings that they would potentially receive in return. If they trusted God, their blessings would be tenfold. Not to mention other members made them feel like shit for not tithing the full 10%. So against their better judgment, they did tithe 10%, even though they very much couldn't afford it. And even though the church never invested that money back into my family. My sister, for example, was a single mother and she never got help despite asking, aside from a couple of members giving her $20 from time to time. And ironically, my family had to rely on other churches during their toughest times instead of the actual fucking church that they attended every single Sunday and Wednesday. There was this Seventh-day Adventist church in Portland that had a clothing bank, and we would go there when I was younger because they would help us out, no questions asked, even though we never attended a single service. Meanwhile, the Baptist church that we went to told us to go fuck ourselves in times of need. And I don't think that my experience is that unique. There's a lot of Zoomers and millennials my age, especially gay and trans ones, that still have lingering trauma from our days as fundamentalist Christians, which is part of the reason why I think religiosity in general is declining in the United States, specifically Christianity, although it has notably leveled off according to Pew Research. And it's currently more of a generational divide with only a plurality of 18 to 24-year-olds identifying as Christians compared to the overwhelming majority of Americans 74 and older identifying as Christians. Meanwhile, we've seen growth in non-Christian religions, including Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism, presumably because Christianity has obviously been hijacked by far-right political extremists who are selfish, judgmental, and want to impose their religion on everyone else in society to the detriment of other religious people and non-believers, which is expectedly fueling the backlash that they're experiencing right now. But for the record, even though I'm an atheist, I am not opposed to people being religious or spiritual, even though I consider myself an anti-theist, because if you take comfort in your religion and you're not using it as a justification for bigotry or bad policy, you are not my enemy. The problem that I have is the way religion is weaponized for political purposes, and not just to foment hatred against LGBTQ people and immigrants, but to reinforce brutal economic systems like capitalism, which is why Marx referred to religion as the opiate of the masses, because it pacified the population by getting them to accept that their poor material conditions were okay, because eventually they'd have an afterlife where all of their material needs would be met. I mean, think about it. Think about why this is soothing, because if you're suffering right now, it eases the pain because it gives you something to look forward to one day. You know, eventually you're going to have a mansion in heaven to look forward to when you die. So if that's the case, why even bother challenging the capitalist status quo when you can just wait, because one day you are going to be as rich as the billionaires here on earth. You just got to wait until you die. Now, mind you, this is an oversimplification of Marx's thoughts on religion, of course, but it's easy to see how religion can be cynically weaponized to serve elites. In the United States context, politicians exploit religiosity to divide the working classes in a way that is so explicit that I don't know how people don't see that that's what they're doing, right? They'll tell you that women who get abortions are murderers. They'll treat LGBTQ people as degenerates because they're in violation of biblical laws that in the same section tell you it's also a sin to eat shellfish or wear clothing of mixed linen, by the way, but I mean, they cherry pick the ones that get you to hate your neighbor specifically. And the modern fundamentalist evangelical movement literally became politicized in response to the end of segregation, not abortion, contrary to popular belief. That supplanted the issue of integration later after they realized it was a losing battle. But at the end of the day, I think that the decline in Christianity that we're seeing is a direct result of its association with the fascist Republican Party. Good people who actually want to follow Jesus' socialist message, they don't want to be associated with that toxic brand of Christianity that's so dominant in American politics. And when you take into account the hypocrisy and selfishness of so-called pro-life churches who can't even be bothered to give formula to starving babies, I mean, Christians really have nobody to blame but themselves for their ongoing PR crisis. But again, I don't begrudge anyone who finds comfort or peace in religion and spirituality, because life is hard, and if it gives you comfort, that's okay. But I would argue that this life becomes so much more valuable after you accept that it's only temporary. But with that being said, you know, if you oppose bigotry and you want to make the world a better place, we're on the same team. The people who refused to help this woman, they're not on the team. It's as simple as that.